In 1963, a fifth-grade teacher in rural Texas made a boy hold two encyclopedias above his head for 45 minutes because he whispered during a film strip. His arm shook, he cried. Nobody said a word, not the other kids, not the principal, not even his parents when he told them at supper. Number 14 on this list was so common that entire generations thought it was normal. And number 7 was practiced in over 30 states well into the 1970s. These were not rogue teachers losing their temper. These were approved, administrator-sanctioned methods printed in school policy handbooks. Today, a single one of these would trigger lawsuits, terminations, and front-page headlines. Before we start, hit that subscribe button because this list gets wilder the higher we climb. Let us count down 25 school punishments that would end a teaching career overnight. Number 25, writing sentences on the chalkboard. Before detention slips and parent conferences, the chalkboard was the courtroom. A child caught chewing gum or talking out of turn was marched to the front and handed a piece of chalk. I will not chew gum in class. Write it 100 times, 200 if the teacher was in a mood. The chalk dust coated your fingers, your sleeves, your dignity. Every kid in the room watched. That was the real punishment, the public shame of standing at the board while 30 pairs of eyes burned into your back. Some teachers made students stay through recess to finish. The squeaking of chalk, the only sound in the empty classroom. A stick of chalk cost a penny. The humiliation was free. Number 24, standing in the corner. Simple, devastating, effective. A misbehaving child was told to stand in the corner facing the wall. No talking, no turning around, no sitting, sometimes for the entire period. The worst version had the child pressing their nose against the point where two walls met, arms at their sides. Try holding that position for 20 minutes when you are 8 years old. Your legs ache, your neck stiffens, and behind you, the classroom hums along as if you have ceased to exist. You were present, but invisible, erased from the group until the teacher decided you had earned your way back. Today, this would be classified as isolation punishment, and child psychologists would line up to testify against it. Number 23, knuckle rapping with a wooden ruler. The wooden ruler was not just a measuring tool in the 1960s classroom, it was a weapon. Students who gave wrong answers or were caught daydreaming got their knuckles rapped. The teacher held the ruler flat side down and brought it across the outstretched fingers with a sharp crack. Some teachers preferred the edge for a sharper sting. The sound echoed through the room, and every other student sat a little straighter. In Catholic schools especially, the ruler was an extension of authority, kept on the desk like a gavel. A 12-inch wooden ruler cost 15 cents at the 5 and dime. In the hands of Sister Margaret, it was worth 1,000 words. Number 22, ear pulling and twisting. When a boy was caught horsing around in the hallway, the teacher did not write a referral. She grabbed his ear between her thumb and forefinger and twisted. Then she walked him back to class, still gripping, his head tilted sideways, feet scrambling to keep up. This was not hidden. This was broad daylight, in front of other students, other teachers, sometimes the principal. Nobody flinched. Ear pulling was considered mild, a quick correction. Some teachers had a signature move, a pinch and pull, that lifted the child slightly onto their toes. The pain was sharp and immediate. The message was clear. In America in the 1960s, a teacher touching a student's ear was discipline. Today, it is assault. The shift happened gradually through the 1980s as corporal punishment laws tightened. But for millions of baby boomers, the phantom sting of a twisted earlobe is a memory that never quite fades. Number 21, the dunce cap, a tall pointed cone made from construction paper, sometimes decorated with a large letter D. Teachers placed it on the head of a student who scored lowest on a test or who could not answer a question correctly. The child wearing it was moved to a stool in the corner, elevated so the entire room could see. This was not a 5-minute embarrassment. Some teachers left the cap on for the entire class period. It could mean an hour of sitting higher than everyone, wearing a paper crown of failure, while classmates stole glances and stifled giggles. The dunce cap dates back centuries, and it remained common in American classrooms through the early 1960s. Its decline came not from policy, but from shifting attitudes about public shaming. By 1970, most schools had quietly retired it, but the damage it did to children's self-worth lasted decades. Therapists in the 1990s reported adult patients still carrying shame from a single afternoon spent under that paper cone. Number 20, mouth washing with soap, forcing soap into students' mouths. A child who cursed, talked back, or used what the teacher deemed inappropriate language could be marched to the bathroom and have a bar of ivory soap shoved into their mouth. The teacher would rub it across the tongue and teeth, then make the student hold the lather without spitting for 30 seconds to 1 minute. The taste was bitter, chemical, nauseating. Some children gagged, some vomited. The teacher called it cleaning up your language. In rural schools and small towns, parents often endorsed the method, and they would tell the teacher at open house to go ahead and wash his mouth out. By the 1970s, health concerns about soap ingestion began to surface, but the practice lingered in private homes and some schools well into the decade. Today, it would be classified as a form of physical abuse, and any teacher attempting it would face criminal charges before lunch. Number 19, holding books with outstretched arms. The punishment was elegant in its cruelty. A misbehaving student was told to stand at the front of the room, extend both arms straight out to the sides, and balance a heavy textbook on each palm. Hold them there. Do not drop them. Do not bend your elbows. The first minute was easy. By minute 3, the arms began to tremble. By minute 5, the shoulders burned. By minute 10, most children were in tears, their arms shaking violently, books threatening to crash to the floor. If the books fell, the timer started over. Some teachers used dictionaries. Some used encyclopedias. The heavier the book, the faster the lesson was learned. This was not rare. It appeared in school discipline guides across the South and Midwest. A punishment that left no marks, no bruises, nothing a parent could photograph. Just pain that vanished by supper time and a fear that lasted forever. Number 18, staying after school alone with the teacher. Detention in the 1960s did not mean sitting in a supervised room with other students. It meant staying after the final bell, alone in the classroom with the teacher who punished you, washing the chalkboard, cleaning erasers by clapping them together outside until your lungs filled with chalk dust, scrubbing desks with wet rags. There was no set end time. You stayed until the teacher decided you had served your penance. No parent notification required. No second adult present. A child could be kept until 5 or 6 o'clock with no one informed. The walk home afterward, through empty streets in the failing light, was its own quiet punishment. Today, liability rules require written parent consent, set time limits, and a second staff member present. In 1963, the teacher was judge, jury, and warden. First pattern break. Here is where the list takes a turn. Everything above this point was uncomfortable. Everything below it left marks. And the strangest part is not that these things happened. It is that parents, principals, and entire communities agreed they should happen. PTA meetings in the 1960s did not debate whether teachers should hit children. They debated how hard. A National Education Association survey in 1961 found that over 60% of teachers in the South used some form of physical discipline weekly. Paddling was not the exception. It was Tuesday. Number 17, the wooden paddle. This was the king of school punishment in the 1960s. A flat wooden board, usually 18 inches long, sometimes drilled with holes to reduce air resistance and increase sting. Students were sent to the principal's office, told to bend over, and struck across the backside. 1 swat for minor offenses, 3 to 5 for serious ones. The crack of wood on denim echoed down hallways. Students waiting outside could hear every strike and every muffled cry. In Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, paddling was written into official school code. Parents signed consent forms at the beginning of the year. Some requested extra swats. Make sure he remembers it. The paddle hung on a nail behind the principal's desk like a portrait of authority. Some administrators named their paddles Old Reliable, the Board of Education, the Attitude Adjuster. Number 16. Sent to cut your own switch. In rural southern schools, a child caught fighting or showing defiance was sent outside to select a switch from a tree. The child had to choose carefully. Too thin and it would break, meaning a second trip. Too thick and the teacher might suspect defiance, adding extra strikes. The ideal switch was about 2 feet long, thin and flexible, stripped of leaves. The walk to the tree was the punishment before the punishment. Every step was dread. Every snap of a branch was a decision about your own pain. Then you handed it to the teacher and turned around. The switch left welts that lasted for days. There were red lines across the backs of the legs that stung in the bath and ached against the wooden seat the next morning. Parents saw the marks and often said, "You must have deserved it." The practice was most common in one-room schoolhouses and small district schools where a single teacher held absolute authority over children from 6 to 14 years old. Number 15. Kneeling on uncooked rice or dried peas. This punishment was imported from European Catholic traditions and practiced in parochial schools across the Northeast and the Midwest. A child was told to kneel on a bare floor scattered with uncooked rice. The hard grains dug into the kneecaps with increasing intensity. 5 minutes could feel like 30. 10 minutes left impressions in the skin that lingered for hours. Some teachers used dried split peas, which were slightly larger and arguably worse. The child knelt with hands folded in prayer, sometimes holding a heavy book, reciting a Bible verse or the act of contrition, while the grains pressed deeper. Former students recall the marks on their knees lasting through the weekend. The practice was almost never written in any policy handbook. It existed in the unspoken traditions passed between teachers and nuns in religious schools. By the early 1970s, parents began pushing back, but some schools continued the practice quietly for years after. Number 14. Public paddling in front of the class. Worse than the private paddling in the principal's office was the classroom version. The teacher kept a paddle in the desk drawer and administered punishment on the spot in front of every student. The offending child was called to the front, told to bend over, and struck, while 30 classmates watched in frozen silence. The sound was the same sharp crack, but the audience changed everything. Some children cried. Some refused to cry, biting their lips until they bled, because crying in front of your classmates was its own defeat. The students watching learned the lesson just as clearly as the one receiving it. Sit still, stay quiet, do not challenge. This was the version most schools eventually banned first, not because of the physical contact, but because psychologists in the late 1960s began publishing studies on the effects of public humiliation on child development. The paddle retreated to the principal's office, but for a generation of students, the memory of standing at the front of the room is seared deeper than the sting itself. Number 13. Hair pulling and grabbing. A boy with hair long enough to grab was an easy target. Teachers would seize a fistful at the crown or the sideburns and yank the child to attention. Girls were grabbed by their ponytails. The motion was quick, a short, sharp pull that snapped the head back and sent a jolt down the spine. Some teachers used hair pulling as a steering mechanism, gripping and guiding a child from one seat to another or out the door. It left no visible marks. It required no equipment, and it was over in a second. That speed and invisibility made it one of the most common forms of physical discipline in the decade. By the late 1970s, teacher training programs began prohibiting any physical contact as correction. But for those who felt that sharp tug, the reflex of flinching when someone reaches toward your head never fully disappears. Number 12. Being forced to hold a push-up position. Some gym teachers and football coaches doubled as disciplinarians. Their punishments came from the drill sergeant's playbook. A student who talked back or showed up late was ordered into a push-up position and told to hold it, arms locked, back straight, eyes forward. When the arms buckled, the teacher barked to get back up. Some added a twist, forcing the student to hold the bottom position, arms bent at 90 degrees, chest hovering inches above the gym floor. If the student collapsed, the clock restarted. This was not considered abuse in the 1960s. It was called building character. Second pattern break. We are past the halfway point now, and if you are thinking surely it could not get worse, understand this about the 1960s classroom. Teachers were not just educators. They were surrogate parents with almost no oversight, no security cameras, no mandatory reporting laws until the 1970s, no school counselors in most districts. A teacher's word was final, and a child's word was worth nothing. Number 11, writing with the wrong hand. Left-handed children in the 1960s were treated as problems to be corrected. Teachers physically removed pencils from the left hand and placed them in the right. Students who resisted had their left hand tied to the chair with a handkerchief or placed under their thigh. Some teachers slapped the left hand every time it reached for the pencil. The belief was rooted in old superstition. Left-handedness was associated with clumsiness, deviance, even moral weakness. The Latin word for left, sinister, tells you everything about the attitude. Children forced to write with their non-dominant hand developed cramped, illegible handwriting and were then punished again for poor penmanship. Studies in the 1980s linked forced hand switching to increased stuttering, reading difficulties, and anxiety in affected children. An estimated 10% of the population is naturally left-handed. In the 1960s classroom, that 10% learned very early that something fundamental about them was considered wrong. Number 10, the silent lunch table. A child who misbehaved in the morning was assigned to the silent lunch table, a separate desk or a section of the cafeteria where talking was forbidden. You sat alone or with other punished students, eating in complete silence while the rest of the school buzzed with laughter and conversation around you. No whispering, no eye contact with friends. A teacher or lunch monitor patrolled to enforce the rule. For a child, the cafeteria is the social center of the universe. Being cut off from it, visibly, in front of every kid in your grade, was devastating. Some schools kept students at the silent table for a week of sitting in silence while your friends ate without you. Child psychologists now classify forced social isolation as a form of emotional punishment that can trigger lasting anxiety. In 1964, it was called teaching you a lesson. Number 9, public weigh-ins and body shaming. Physical education classes in the 1960s included regular weigh-ins where students stepped onto a scale in front of classmates while the gym teacher read the number aloud. Overweight children were singled out. Some teachers made comments meant to motivate. "You need to lay off the candy bars, son." Others assigned extra laps or denied participation in team sports. Girls were particularly vulnerable, with some teachers commenting on developing bodies in ways that would result in immediate termination today. Your weight, announced to the room, became ammunition for bullies for weeks. The practice persisted into the 1980s before privacy laws and awareness of eating disorders forced its end. Number 8, smacking hands with a yardstick. The yardstick was the ruler's bigger, meaner cousin. 3 feet of solid wood came down across open palms for offenses ranging from incomplete homework to talking in the hallway. Students were told to extend both hands, palms up, and hold still. The crack of the yardstick was louder than the ruler, the sting deeper, the welt wider. Some teachers struck the palms, others aimed for the fingertips, which hurt worse and left hands tingling and useless for writing for the rest of the period. In shop class and home economics, yardsticks were always within reach, serving double duty as measuring tools and as instruments of correction. A yardstick cost a quarter. Hardware stores and lumber yards often gave them away for free, with the company name printed down the side. So every time the punishment fell, A child read Wilson's Feed and Supply across the wood that stung their skin. Number 7. Duct taping a student's mouth shut. A child who would not stop talking received the ultimate silence. A strip of tape was pressed across the lips, sometimes masking tape, sometimes duct tape. The child sat in class with tape over their mouth for the remainder of the period, unable to speak, unable to participate. The adhesive pulled at the skin, and breathing was restricted to the nose. Some teachers wrote the offense on the tape itself, including phrases such as "talks too much" and "class clown." The tape was a billboard of failure worn on the face. This practice appeared in school photographs from the era, so normalized that teachers saw nothing wrong with documenting it. By the late 1970s, it was widely condemned, but isolated incidents were reported as recently as the 2000s, each making national news precisely because what was once routine became unthinkable. Number 6. Locking students in closets or storage rooms. A disruptive student was sometimes placed in the coat closet or a supply room, and the door was closed. In the dark, surrounded by coats or stacks of textbooks, the child waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, sometimes half an hour. No window, no light switch within reach. The muffled sounds of the classroom continued on the other side. Some children screamed, some went silent, some developed claustrophobia that followed them into adulthood. Teachers called it a cooling-off period. In reality, it was solitary confinement for children as young as 6. Modern seclusion laws now strictly regulate when a student can be separated, and locked rooms are prohibited in most states. In 1962, the coat closet was just another tool. Number 5. Forcing a child to wear a sign. A student who cheated, lied, or committed some social offense was made to wear a cardboard sign around their neck for the remainder of the school day. The sign read, "I am a cheater." The sign read, "I am a liar." The sign read, "I did not do my homework." The child walked the hallways, sat in class, ate lunch, and stood at recess with that sign hanging against their chest. Every student in the school could read it. The sign transformed the child into a walking confession, a living warning to others. Some teachers added creative punishments to the sign. A boy who pulled a girl's hair might wear a sign that read, "I bother girls." A child caught stealing from a desk might wear a sign that read, "I am a thief." The signs were handwritten, sometimes in the child's own handwriting as part of the punishment. Public shaming at this level would trigger immediate intervention by school counselors and administrators today. In the 1960s, other teachers saw the sign and nodded approvingly. Number 4. Washing bathroom floors as punishment. When a student committed a serious offense, some schools assigned manual labor. The most common task was scrubbing school bathrooms on hands and knees with a brush and bucket. Students missed class to clean toilets and tile floors while janitors looked on. The work was disgusting and the message was clear. Misbehave and you become the help. Some children scrubbed for an entire afternoon. Others were assigned bathroom duty for a week. The practice blurred the line between discipline and child labor, and its disproportionate application to minority students in segregated and newly integrated schools added a layer of cruelty that went unspoken for decades. Number 3. The rubber hose. In some schools, particularly in the Deep South, administrators kept a length of rubber hose in the office. Thicker than a switch, more flexible than a paddle, the rubber hose delivered a punishment that was specifically designed to cause maximum pain with minimum visible bruising. The hose was swung against the legs, backside, or hands. The rubber absorbed into the flesh on impact, spreading the force across a wide area. Students described the pain as deep and burning, different from the sharp sting of a paddle. Because the hose left fewer marks, it was harder for parents to document and harder for anyone to prove. It existed in a gray area that administrators exploited. The rubber hose was never written into any official policy. It was the punishment that was not supposed to exist. But former students from rural districts across Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana Recall it vividly. A punishment designed to hurt without leaving evidence is not discipline. It is something else entirely. Third pattern break. What you are about to read in the final two entries represents the darkest intersection of 1960s school discipline and the era's social failures. These punishments were not just cruel, they were systemic, and they affected children who had no voice and no advocate. Number 2, segregation era punishment disparities. In the years surrounding desegregation, black students entering previously all-white schools faced disciplinary systems designed to push them out. Minor infractions that earned white students a warning earned black students suspension. Talking in class became defiance. A forgotten textbook became willful disobedience. The paddle came out faster, swung harder, and landed more often. Teachers and administrators who opposed integration used the discipline code as a weapon, documenting offense after offense to build a case for expulsion. In some districts, black students were paddled for infractions that white students committed without consequence in the same classroom on the same day. Federal investigators reviewing school records in the late 1960s found discipline rates for black students running 3 to 5 times higher than for white students in newly integrated schools. The punishment was not the paddle. The punishment was the system itself, applied unevenly with the precision of policy and the cruelty of prejudice. These disparities did not end with the 1960s. They echoed through the decades, shaping suspension and expulsion rates that persist today. Number 1, punishment for disabilities and learning differences. At the top of this list stands the cruelest practice of all, the routine punishment of children whose only offense was learning differently. In the 1960s, dyslexia was called laziness. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder was labeled defiance. Autism was treated as a behavioral disorder. Children who could not sit still were paddled until they did. Children who could not read aloud were mocked in front of the class and made to stand in the corner wearing the dunce cap. Children who processed information slowly were held after school, given extra beatings, and told they were stupid by the very adults paid to teach them. There were no individualized education programs, no special education mandates, no legal protections. The Education for All Handicapped Children Act would not pass until 1975. For 15 years, an entire generation of children with undiagnosed learning disabilities were beaten, shamed, and broken by a system that mistook their struggles for stubbornness. Some dropped out. Some never recovered. Some carry the voice of a teacher telling them they would never amount to anything. And some of those children grew up, got diagnosed, and realized at 40 or 50 years old that nothing was ever wrong with them at all. Every punishment on this list existed because adults believed pain and shame were the fastest routes to obedience. Some vanished quietly. Others required lawsuits, legislation, and decades of advocacy to dismantle. If any of these sound familiar, if you felt that ruler, wore that sign, or sat at that silent table, leave a comment and tell us which one you remember. Share this with someone who lived it. They deserve to know the world finally agrees it was wrong.